board. These are all members of the board of this area of the table. Mr. Eisenbacher, Mr. Krent, Vice Chairman Bloomingdale, Mr. Neal, Mr. Courtney, and off to the side there is Mr. Evans, who represents the city administration for the city of Troy. And then Ms. Dufresne is an assistant city attorney, and she acts as our legal advisor here at this panel. And I'm Glenn Clark, the chairman of the board. And at this point in time, we are going to ask for the roll to be called. Mr. Evans, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Bloomingdale.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Courtney.
Here.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Here.
Mr. Neal.
Here.
Mr. Krent.
Here.
Mr. Lambert.
Here.
We have a full board and we have quorum. So at this point in time, before we move on with the item number 2, I'm going to call on Mr. Vice Chairman Bloomingdale to talk about our procedures here and how we operate as a board, just so there's full disclosure, everyone is on the same page as far as speaking in front of the board tonight and interacting with the board. So Vice Chairman Bloomingdale, please.
Thank you, sir. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a group of 7 of your neighbors or peers appointed by City Council to pass judgment on requests for variances and other matters that are brought before them. A variance is a relaxation of the literal provisions of the zoning ordinance. Petitioners must indicate a hardship or practical difficulty running with the land that would warrant the granting of the variance. The procedure is as follows. The board will hear the items in the order that they appear on the agenda. When an item is called, the chairman will verify that the petitioner is present. Then the city administration will summarize the facts of the case. The petitioners will then be given an opportunity to address the board to explain the justification for the action requested. After the petitioner makes his presentation and answers any questions that the board may have, the chairman will open the public hearing. Any person wishing to speak on the request should raise their hand, and when recognized by the chairman, come up to the podium. The speaker should identify themselves with name and address, indicate the relationship to the property in question, for example, next door neighbor, live behind the property, or so forth. Then state whether they are in favor of or against the variance request, and give reasons for their opinion. Comments must be directed through the chairman. Comments should be kept as brief as possible and closely pertain to the matter under consideration. Only one person by the chair will be recognized by the chairman to speak at one time. At the conclusion of public comments, the chairman will close the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, no other public comment will be taken unless in response to a specific question by a member of the board. The board will then make a motion to approve, deny, or table, delay the action of the request. In order for the request to pass, a minimum of 4 votes for approval are needed. If the request is not granted, the applicant has the right to appeal the board's decision to Oakland County City Court.
Thank you. So at this point, we will move on with the approval of minutes, item number 2. Are there any questions related to the minutes from a board member, or is there a motion that someone would like to make?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Ms.
I need to correct something. It's not, we don't have to correct the minutes, but I miscommunicated to the board last month Ms. Bloom's invitation regarding the Open Meetings Act. She was not suggesting that you all had to go to the Planning Commission. She's actually going to come to this board and give a presentation. So we don't have to necessarily correct the minutes, because that accurately reflects what I said last month, but I just wanted the board to be aware that Ms. Bloom plans to come here probably in November to give her presentation.
Very good, thank you. And so the invitation to the Planning Commission is still...
Obviously, you're welcome to go to the Planning Commission, but I don't want, she didn't want you to feel like she's only going to give that presentation there. She will do it for you guys as well.
Thank you very much for the clarification. Is there a member who would like to make a motion?
I'll move.
Mr. Krent moves approval of the minutes as presented. Is there a second? Mr. Lambert seconds that motion. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Mr. Evans, I believe we're prepared to vote.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Courtney?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. Bloomingdale?
Yes.
Motion passes. Item number 3 is approval of the agenda. Are there any questions related to this agenda or comments? If not, we have an agenda set for tonight's meeting, and we can move right on to number 4, which is related to a variance request from James Majeski. I was going to pronounce the C a more hard C, but of Jimco Construction Company related to 1635 Witherby. And at this point in time, I'll call on Mr. Evans to present the information related to this case.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As indicated, this property is located at 1635 Witherby. As printed in the agenda, the request is, in order to reconstruct a garage, a 3-foot variance from the requirement that the garage be set back at least 5 feet from the side property line. I'd like to direct everybody's attention to the big screens to either side and behind the board. What I've provided here is an aerial map of the neighborhood. The subject property is located south of West Big Beaver and east of Adams Road. In this aerial map, it is the property outlined in red near the bottom of the map. Now, this is a close-up of the same map in the neighborhood, and in the center of your screen outlined in red is 1635 Witherby. This area is used for single-family residential housing. I've taken that same map and in yellow overlaid the zoning classification of R1E, single-family zoning. And as we can all see, the subject property and all surrounding properties in the area share an identical zoning. Now, the nature of this request involves reconstruction of the garage, which is located in front of the house. And this survey provided by the applicant, Witherby is at the bottom, and it shows the house and the garage. And I've clouded in red the area in question of the garage. More specifically, also, he has provided some elevation drawings indicating that a 36-inch setback from the side property line to the foundation, but the overhang is going to extend a foot into that. So that would show that he's going to be 2 feet off that east or side property line. With his proposal, he's provided the board some additional elevations as to what the proposed project will look like. And the setback is from the side property line or the east property line. The zoning ordinance requires a 5-foot setback. As proposed, the structure will be as close as 2 feet to that side property line. So a variance of 3 feet is requested in order to proceed. I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Are there any questions or comments from a board member? Mr. Lambert.
Just a quick question, Mr. Evans. Is it the roof that actually is encroaching, or is it part of the garage as well?
It appears to be the soffit. I'll refer to the south elevation drawing. And in the upper right-hand corner of the soffit, so it's not the structure, just the roof soffit.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any-
Question, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman?
Mr. Bloomingdale.
Is it correct to assume then that the new structure will be in line with the elevation of the house? I think it's the east side. In other words, the wall for the garage or whatever is there will be in line with the existing house.
It appears that way, and perhaps we could defer to the applicant for additional assurances.
Okay, at this point in time, I'd like to call the applicant forward, and if you could just step to the podium here, identify yourself for the public record, if you would.
Jim Majeski, Jimco Construction. In response to the question about the...
Could you step closer to the microphone, because it's being recorded?
Okay. Oh, sure. The east wall of the garage is not in line with the wall of the house. It is in the exact same place that the existing garage is now. I don't know whether that was variance or whatever, but it's in the same position as what we have here now. This is a picture of what we have. Can you see how that the carport, the garage is now? And then this is what we want to do with it, is bring in and put the garage in that position. So it does hang out past the existing wall of the house, and that's why we're needing the variance.
Would you like to state anything else for?
Well, the
board?
hardships, I guess, the existing garage port, as you can see now, with all these posts and the shelving and such in here, there's no, you can't open a car door. It's really not very useful for that. Plus, we think that the new garage will look much nicer and be more of a, have more curb appeal than the existing structure. Additionally, moving the garage over to be in line with the east wall of the garage would compromise the front door. If we were to move it over, we would encumber our entrance coming up to the front door quite a bit. There are, many other structures in that neighborhood that are very similar to this, and they're, as you can see in the the overview of the lots, they're very tight lots, and most of them are built to or on, near the property lines and such. I guess that's about it. Is there any other questions, or?
Mr. Courtney?
Yeah, is that currently a garage or a carport?
Well, we've called it a garage, but I would call it a carport.
Okay, because that's what I thought I saw.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's open on 3 sides.
Yeah, okay, thank you. The new one is going to be a garage or a carport?
Fully closed,
Fully
a garage.
closed with door.
Correct. Yep.
That's what it looked like on here.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
So I have a question for you. If you could refer back to the rendering.
Yep.
So what are you calling the overhang?
This is the overhang here.
Right.
The roof
So you were
line.
calling it overhang. Okay, yeah, the roof line.
Yep.
So we're talking about 2 feet from the property line.
This is 2 feet. This wall is 3 feet from
Right.
the property line.
So we just had some horrific storms here in the Troy area recently. And let's just say hypothetically, it rained a lot more than it did here, which it could, depending on the season.
It's true.
That spillage from the roof, perhaps, depending if it's a heavy storm, could be onto the neighbor's property
I know where you're going.
on a regular basis. And I'm not necessarily saying flooding issues, but I am also saying, if they wanted to put, landscaping,
gardens.
flowers especially, or
Sure.
something that's more delicate.
can
How do you
appreciate
address that?
I can appreciate that. Well, currently, there's over 18 feet between the John's house and the neighbor's house. John also got a letter from the neighbor, and they've got no objection, and he's got a signed letter from that. So I think there's actually another 15 feet from the property line to the neighbor's house. So I really don't think it's going to, and this is a good picture that shows the distance and all the grass in between. So I really don't think that's going to be an issue.
Okay, I was referring just to the property line, not the house. I
Okay.
understand what you're saying.
Well, I wouldn't want to dump that water into someone else's basement.
Right, for sure.
I get it.
And do you have a letter from the neighbor that you can make available to the board? Sure. Perhaps maybe start over here, we can all look at it, then it'll end up in the official record. Are there any other questions for this petitioner or comments? Mr. Crenton?
First of all, it's a lovely home, and the addition certainly enhances the house. My question, though, is, I'm looking at that brick is, no, the other, where you had those other photographs,
yes.
right there. That line of sight, that brick line, that is the house. Your
This
finger's
is the
on it.
house, yes.
That is the house. Those poles are slightly to the east
Correct.
of the actual, so are those poles within the setback now?
No,
They're not.
no.
So the house is, how far is the actual house from the property line?
The house is 5 feet to the
Okay.
property line.
And those poles are in line with the house?
No,
They are,
they are outside of the house.
okay,
So
so
they're
that-
currently
they are
built
into
out.
they are actually right now into the setback?
Correct.
Should not be there?
That's correct.
Okay.
You can't from there, so you can come forward if you like. You are I assume you're the petitioner, and this is your representative, so please identify yourself, and you'll have to speak into the microphone.
I'm
Thank you.
the property owner at 1635 Witherby,
Your
and
name?
my name is John Bloyer.
Okay?
The current posts that we're discussing here were on the property in that position when we bought the house 40 years ago. So we haven't changed it. I don't know if, in fact, there was any variance applied for. That was, if there was, that would have been the previous owners, yeah. So,
Okay. Does that address?
Yes,
Mr.
but I had
Crenn?
another follow-up
Yes,
on that.
sure.
I haven't heard you identify a hardship that goes with the land. That's the key question we have to wrestle with.
The functionality of the garage, is that a hardship?
No. It has to do with the land. In other words, the reason we can grant a variance is if, because of something to do with the land, that you couldn't duplicate what other neighbors in your neighborhood have done. Let's say, just a quick example, because maybe that line of sight narrowed near your particular addition, although by the front of the house, let's say you had 10 feet, and in the back it was only 3 feet, so you're allowed that 5 foot there. Could be some kind of a situation with the land because the way the property lines are drawn. I personally don't see a hardship that came with the land, and that's key to granting a variance here. So unless you can think of one, I can't think of one.
yeah, I'm really not sure I understand your point.
Well,
Do you, Jim? Hardship with the land, that would be a concern that the neighbor wouldn't necessarily have? No.
it has to do with the law. It has nothing to do with your neighbor's letter and your beautiful addition.
Yeah.
It's the parameters that we have to make judgment by, that we have to follow. It's nothing, again, this is a beautiful addition.
Yeah, thank you, yeah.
As related to perhaps an example would be an irregular shaped parcel or the elevation of the parcel, something in that regard. But maybe you can think about that. I think Mr. Lambert was next, and then we can go to Mr. Eisenbacher.
Okay.
My question was, and this may be, looking at the drawing, I don't know how accurate it is, and my eyes might be off considering my advanced years, but is the property almost looks like it's at an angle rather than being a straight.
Well, the lot is, but the house runs pretty parallel with the property line on that side.
On that side, but on the other side, though, it narrows.
That's correct.
Okay, that was what I thought might be your hardship that you might want to bring up as being something that you're dealing with there. So, but that was my only question.
And a hardship would not apply to the fact that that's the only place we can put a garage is where it is?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Crenn.
It can't be of a personal nature. In other words, it can't be because you want this to be. It has to be with the land. Even though I love your solution, but I'm wrestling with how I can fit that into the law.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
When I read through this, the way I saw it is that if the property were rectangular and not pie-shaped, right now, looking at the survey, it looked like it's almost 64 feet wide in the back and 55 feet in the front. If the right property line were square and parallel, this variance wouldn't be needed because it would have plenty of width in the front. But because of that pie-shaped narrowing, it gets too narrow where the garage happens to be situated. So I believe the irregular shape of the property, where instead of being rectangular, is what gives the exceptional characteristic.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Courtney.
That was the same comment I had, the 55 feet in the front and the much wider back.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments for this or questions for this petitioner? Seeing none, if you gentlemen could have a seat. Thank you very much. At this point in time, we'll open up the public hearing. If you'd like to address the board with your comments, or concerns, please step to the podium. Seeing that we have no one available or interested, close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Mr. Evans.
Yes, and regarding public comment, the applicant did provide a letter from Mary Ellen Howitt, who lives at 1641 Weatherby, which is directly adjacent and east of this property, the next door neighbor, and she has no objections or concerns regarding the variance request.
Thank you very much. And that was disclosed to the board, and we have a copy on file now. Every board member saw that letter. So at this point in time, I'll bring it back to the board for any further discussion, motions, et cetera. Mr. Krent.
This would be a question for staff, Mr. Evans. Do you happen to know the required setback on the other side for this district for R1E? In other words, we've got looks like 15 foot 8 inches on the other side at one point, and it looks like 12.3 in the back of the house. Do you happen to know, or no, that's not, was that 15 or 13?
How could that be, yeah?
It can't be.
Yeah, the math
Could be
doesn't.
wrong.
That doesn't add up. It gets wider as it goes
Yes.
back.
So,
It doesn't make sense.
The required setback for the other side would be 10 feet,
Okay.
and I believe they do have
10 feet.
it appears to show 10.
Yeah.
It looks like 15.8, Mr. Krent, to the distance indicated to the house next door.
Oh, I see that.
Someone marked in 10
Okay,
feet
okay.
there.
So it is 10 foot
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, so, all right, thank you.
Are any other members like to address this issue before us, this agenda item?
Well, I just wanna
Mr. Krent.
I just want to make a comment. So when the house was originally constructed, because it's 10 foot and it's 10 foot required, the house could not have been built any closer to that west property line at all. So that's it. If it had, let's say, an extra 12 foot or something there, it'd be a different story, but that's built as close as they could have, and the other side of the house was built exactly 5 foot, so as close as they built right within the setbacks. That's all I just wanted to clarify that the house was basically maxed out as far as setbacks.
Sure. It's a tight fit there for sure, without any question. Mr. Eisenbacher.
If there's no further discussion, I would like to move the resolution going through the 5 criteria with Section A, the exceptional characteristic of the property that I believe exists is the irregular shape of the property being pie-shaped, narrower in the front than in the back. Although it is maxed out at its exact location, if it were moved back, there'd be plenty of space, or if it were angled differently, there could be plenty of space. But with the shape of the property as it is, with the pie shape, that's an exceptional characteristic that's unique on this property, but as you look around the other properties within the neighborhood, they don't have that narrowing pie shape. Second one, this property is the cause and the property being requested. This is not a personal request. This is how the site is laid out with that property width. And the characteristics, item D, the characteristic which makes compliance with the dimensional requirement difficult must not have been created by the current or a previous owner. It was not created by the house owner, it was the builder. And E, the proposed variance will not be harmful or alter the essential character in the area. There have been no objections from any of the neighbors in the neighborhood, and the neighbor that has the most impact, which is the adjacent next door neighbor, sent us a letter of approval. So with that, I'd approve the variance.
The motion is placed before us. Is there a second? Mr. Courtney seconds that motion. Any discussion from the board? Seeing none, I believe, Mr. Evans, we're prepared for a vote.
Mr. Courtney,
Yes?
Mr. Eisenbacher,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
No.
Mr. Krent,
No.
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
Mr. Bloomingdale,
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes. Motion is approved. You have your variance. Have a very good evening. You're welcome. Item number 5, Mr. Krent. did you-
I always like
yes.
usually we, on no votes, we like to explain why we vote for no. Although the project looks terrific, personally, I don't see on any way I can maneuver it, I can't see approval of this variance or a variance on another neighbor's lot, because there's nothing on that side of the house that's angled. It's a straight line. It's well-defined what the property setback should be, and it really has no relation to the other side that is angled, so that's why I voted no.
Thank you. Hearing no other comments, I believe we can move on to item 5, which are communications. Mr. Evans, do we have any communications?
No, we don't.
Thank you. We also have miscellaneous business. I don't believe we have any extra business, but if there's any, please, if you're a member or staff, please speak up now. And at that point in time, we'll move on to public comment. Are there any comments from the public or board in general terms? I have one minor issue. I just want to make people aware that you'll be seeing this apparently coming up in the local media, but unrelated to zoning issues, but related to the city. We do have a upcoming town hall September 25th at the Troy Community Center at 7 p.m. on the water board revision and reform related to the Detroit water system vis-a-vis this package deal that the Oakland County Executive, Macomb County Executive, and I don't know who else was involved in that, besides, I think, the mayor, obviously, of the city of Detroit. And so the Oakland County Commission has to approve it before it can go forward, and it'll be right here just around the corner at the Troy Community Center. It's a bipartisan town hall meeting. All the county commissioners who represent the city of Troy will be sponsoring it. So that's Gary McGilvery, Robert Goslin, and Mike Bosnick. And so the public can come out, and I guess Mr. Poison, who's a deputy county executive, will be presenting for the Oakland County side of things, and the public will be able to give commentary to the commissioners. And I spoke to one of the commissioners, and apparently there will, even with the reform package, there will be significant rate increases. So I think it's important to note. But I guess it's kind of a catch-22. If Oakland County doesn't approve it, the rate increases will be even that much more significant. So it's one of those situations I think the public should just be aware of and participate if they want. It's, sorry, I'll tell you in 2 seconds. September 25th at 7 p.m., Troy Community Center. It should be in the local papers. Any other public comments? Hearing none, I believe we could move forward to item 8, which is adjournment, and we will look forward to seeing everybody in October. Thank you.